Hello everybody, my name is Byron and I serve as the church planter for Momentum Christian Fellowship.
My name is Garrett. I serve as the local missions director here at Nova.
And today we're happy you're joining us for Nova at Home.
That's right. In this space, you will be joining with hundreds of other people in the South Bay and beyond in worship.
But before we jump into our worship service, we have just a few things we want you to know about.
First, this past Monday, Nova partnered with Saddleback South Bay and put on a pop-up food pantry here in Nova's parking lot.
Roughly 75 cars came through, which equates to about 300 people receiving food that would last them for a whole week.
In addition to this, we also put on a food collection on that same day. We filled about 60 standard-sized crates, filled them to the brim with food, toiletries, activities for kids, cleaning supplies, etc. that will be used in future food distributions.
So a big thanks to everyone who donated food and served in various ways through this ministry. And plans are in the works for another food collection and food distribution next month. So stay tuned in the coming weeks for details about that.
Also, believe it or not, new small groups are continuing to form during this time of social distancing.
So if you want to be in a small group, now is as good a time as any to join.
Yeah, that's right. And if you would like more information about small groups, what they are, what they're about, or if you would like to join one, you can contact Pastor Adam at adamduchin@novachurch.org.
Near the top of this page, you're going to find a couple of things. The first is a YouTube link that will play all of the videos on this page in one continuous video. Forwarding that link is great if you want to share this worship service with someone you know. Of course, another way would just be to share this link to this page.
The second thing you're going to find near the top of this page is a link to our children's lesson. This lesson will have videos and activities that families can enjoy together.
And finally, if you have any prayer requests, you can send them to prayer@novachurch.org. There's a team of Nova people who will get those and keep you in prayer.
Also, please keep supporting Nova's ministries. You can do so by physically mailing us your tithe, or you can give online. All of that information can be found at novachurch.org/giving.
And with that, we love you, we miss you, but we're also happy to still be worshiping with you in this space.
Take care, everybody.
Hi, Nova family. Our leadership board chairman, Andrew, and I are bringing you an update on preparing for in-person gatherings.
We know that the church is a community of people who worship and follow Jesus Christ and are called to be and make disciples of Jesus. We're not just a building, and we're not just a Sunday morning gathering.
And Nova is a church on mission. We're worshiping together through Nova at Home. We're meeting in small groups every week through Zoom. We're serving hot meals to the hungry. We're collecting and distributing food to those who've lost their jobs. We're shopping and running errands for those who feel like they're safer at home. And we're reaching out to friends and neighbors and strangers with kindness and a good word, a prayer and a smile. We really are #Nova together.
For many weeks now, Nova leaders have been praying and thinking and envisioning how and when we can gather together in person. The best way to describe how we're thinking of this is instead of putting together a blueprint, we're putting together a game plan.
Now, a blueprint is what architects design, and builders have a specific hard plan that they follow to a T, and that's a good thing. But in this uncertain and ever-changing time, we need to wisely think through a game plan that'll help us make up-to-the-minute adjustments when things change. Coaches have a game plan, and they're prepared to make adjustments as the game conditions change.
In Nova's game plan, the resources we will need for Sunday in-person gatherings include teams of people in the following areas. We're going to need setup and tear down folks, audio technicians, restroom monitors, children's ministry volunteers, ushers and greeters, and parking guides.
Now, Nova will have in-person Sunday worship when the following two conditions are met. The first condition is our state, county, or city officials, when they give us the green light to open up our campus safely for in-person Sunday worship. And the second condition is when we have prepared the Nova campus and equipped the ministry leaders for Sunday in-person worship services.
We encourage you to love and support one another well in the next phase, as some of us will be eager to gather again in person and others will be more cautious in this season. And we plan to update you again soon on our game plan.
In the meantime, keep worshiping with Nova at home and gathering in small groups online and reaching out to people with the love of Jesus.
Thanks for tuning in to this update. We look forward to seeing you again at Nova very soon.
You know, I love you and I miss you, and I'm so excited to see you in person again soon.
In these times in which we find ourselves, what an amazing thing it is, not merely to believe in a God, but to know a God who is constant through all the change, whose love never fails, whose word stands firm. He is the one who is present through every battle, through every heartbreak, through every circumstance. So let's honor him in our lives, especially in these times. And would you sing these worship songs with us now?
Through every battle, through every heartbreak, through every circumstance, I believe that you are my fortress, you are my portion, you are my hiding place. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe through every blessing, through every promise, through every breath I take. I believe that you are provider, and you are protector, and you are the one I love. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are. It's a new horizon, and I'm set on you. And you made me here today with mercies that I knew. All my fears and doubts, they can all come too, because they can't stay long when I'm here with you. It's a new horizon, and I'm set on you. And you made me here today with mercies that I knew. All my fears and doubts, well, they can all come too, because they can't stay long when I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the way, you are the truth, you are the life. I believe you are the way, you are the truth, and you are the life. I believe you are. This is how I fight my battles. Yeah, this is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. Come on. This is how I fight my battles. 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 It may look like we're surrounded, but we're surrounded by you. It may look like we're surrounded, but we're surrounded by you. It may look like we're surrounded, but we're surrounded by you. It may look like we're surrounded, but we're surrounded by you. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. Lord, this is how I fight my battles. 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 Something inside us is coming alive. It's sending us out with authority. Something inside us is coming alive. It's sending us out with authority. You fill us with fire, holy desire. Your spirit is all that we'll ever need. You fill us with fire, holy desire. Your spirit is all that we'll ever need. You are 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 all that we'll ever need. Well, something inside us is coming alive. He's sending us out with authority. Something inside us is coming alive. He's sending us out with authority. You fill us with fire, holy desire. Your spirit is all that we'll ever need. You fill us with fire, holy desire. Your spirit is all that we'll ever need. You are 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 all that we'll ever need. Yeah, you are all that we'll ever need. Breaking down strongholds of the enemy by the blood of the Lamb. Breaking down strongholds of the enemy by your blood, by your blood. Breaking down strongholds of the enemy by the blood of the Lamb. Breaking down strongholds of the enemy by your blood, by your blood. 'Cause you are all that we'll ever need. 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 pressing on, pressing on, pressing on towards the goal. 1, 2, 3, 4 steps to the end of the road. Pressing on, pressing on, pressing on towards the goal. Moving to the rhythm of Jesus' heart. Moving to the rhythm of Jesus' heart. Moving to the rhythm of Jesus' heart. Moving to the rhythm of Jesus' heart.
Hello, my name is Adam, and I'm the associate pastor here at Nova. I want to welcome everyone who's joining us today. I know that we've got people from Nova and also from Momentum and Gateway churches joining in, and there are others too, so welcome. I'm glad you've joined us. We've been in a series for the last few weeks called Life Interrupted. When we first started talking about this short series as a staff here at the church, we talked about a number of different biblical passages where life got interrupted for God's people. My mind immediately went to the Old Testament passage surrounding the verse we're going to look at today. That was just a few weeks ago. As time went by and I continued to think and pray about this message for our series, I found myself drawn back into this very familiar verse. At least it's very familiar for me. Maybe it is for you too. This is one that many of you kids might even know. The verse is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Oh, and it's very familiar for me because I have it up on a wall in my office. Here's my poster. I got this for my office about 5 or 6 years ago when I realized something about this particular verse, which was eye-opening for me. I am a planner, and I mean a planner. Maybe you can relate. Many of us are planners, some more than others, some with more details than others, but this makes total sense because we're all different. But for me, it's actually a deep personality thing. I don't like it when things are left unplanned. It doesn't even have to be my plan, but there has to be a plan. Years ago, I realized something when I was reading through Jeremiah again. This is a great verse that talks about plans. Here in this verse, God says that he knows the plan that he has. That's pretty cool. But that's not what I learned. What I learned is more about what the verse does not say. You see, nowhere in this verse does it say that God has to tell me the plan. He knows the plan, and he doesn't owe me any explanation whatsoever. Today, we're going to take a closer look at Jeremiah 29:11. Let's dive right in with a little background on Jeremiah. Jeremiah was one of God's prophets, and his book is found in the Old Testament. He began his prophetic ministry in the 13th year of King Josiah's reign, we're told in chapter 1, verse 2. This was around 626 BC. He continued until he was carried off to Egypt, probably around 584 BC. This was shortly after the destruction of Judah, the temple, and Jerusalem. Jeremiah was commissioned by God to deliver a very unpopular message. He was not liked because of what he had to say. God had even told him that his message would be rejected and he himself would be persecuted. This led him to talk about stopping being God's prophet and even to curse the day of his own birth. Pretty hard stuff. Our particular verse comes in a portion of Jeremiah that is a letter to the exiles in chapter 29, verses 1 through 23. I think we can learn from a letter to the exiles. You see, the Israelites were in exile. This was a punishment from God as a result of their disobedience. Jeremiah confronts the false prophet Hananiah in chapter 28 of his book. Hananiah had proclaimed that God was going to free Israel from Babylon in 2 years. Spoiler alert, God doesn't do this. Jeremiah calls out Hananiah's lie and then brings us to the promise that we read in 29, verse 11. But the thing is, before he shares this promise, He gives them a directive from God. Also, seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. That's chapter 29, verse 7. This is not at all what the Israelites wanted to hear. They wanted to be told that they were going to go home. They wanted to be told that their suffering was going to end. Instead, God's plan was for them to stay right where they were and to help prosper the nation that enslaved them. And then came the biggest blow of all. In verse 10, God says that he would fulfill this when 70 years are completed. This meant that none of the people in the current generation of Israelites would ever return to their home. What a crushing thing to be told. This disruption of their life was never a part of their plan. But there are some things that we can learn about plans, because we can be learning about plans. God tells them through Jeremiah that he knows the plan that he has for them. You see, God has the plan. God has the plan. I read it this way recently. God makes and God knows God's plan. In this verse in Jeremiah, God says, I know the plans I have for you. We do not know what the plans are, but God does. These are God's plans for us, not our plans for God, or even our plans for us. God insists on his right to know and fulfill his plans, which, by the way, is why the plans are so good. They are God's plans, not ours. The God who knows the plans also carries them out. In the verses that follow, Jeremiah proceeds to list all the things that God will do. I will be found by you. I will bring you back from captivity. I will gather you. I will bring you back to the place. God does the finding. God does the gathering. God does the bringing back. Since God made the plans and knows the plans, it makes sense for him to fulfill the plans. Now, there are a couple things to note here. First, when God says he knows the plans he has for you, it's important to understand whom he means by you, the word you. Christians often apply Jeremiah's promise individually, but maybe Jeremiah's promise shouldn't be taken so individually. It's not necessarily a private promise. The you in I know the plans for you, you refers to the people of God. The people of God. So before thinking about what the promise means for you individually, think about what it means for us. In Jeremiah's case, the promise of return was for the whole community of exiles. In the case of the church, the promise of salvation in Christ is for the whole community of believers, the people of God. One other thing to remember is that whatever God is doing, he isn't finished yet. By its very nature, a plan is something that will not be completed until sometime in the future. If God has plans for hope in a future, you must give him enough time to work them out. This is why Christians live by faith. I once read that a Christian is someone who trusts the promises of God for the future and acts upon them in the present. In other words, the Christian acts on God's promises before they are fulfilled. That's the idea behind Hebrews 11, verse 1, which reads, Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Now, there's probably a whole lot more related to this verse that can be and has been said about plans. But as I was drawn back into this passage and this verse recently, I came to the realization that I don't think this verse is really about plans. I think it's about something else. This brings up another thing that we can do here. We can be learning about hope. Have you ever seen the movie Monsters, Inc.? You know, with Sully and Boo and Mike Wazowski. If you haven't seen it, I don't want to give too much away, but it's a story from the monsters' perspective about what they do, how they live their lives, and also why they do what they do. And it's a story about how all of that changes and the cascading effects that happen to them and their whole world when one monster encounters a little girl. I read something recently about this movie that was so good, I had to use it. I'll just summarize it here. You know what Monsters, Inc. teaches us? Monsters only have the power that we give them. The author noted that fear works the same way. We lose sleep dreading things. We toss and turn, thinking of all the bad outcomes. And then we wake up to another new morning. We could have skipped over the sleepless nights if we had given into hope instead of fear. Now, we might not be able to laugh like the little girl in Monsters, Inc., but maybe we can muster just a grin, knowing that the outcomes are God's to decide and not ours. We don't need to be stuck looking up at the ceiling, worrying. We can choose to tell ourselves a story of hope instead. And we can know that the monsters really aren't that scary and probably aren't even real. We can choose hope. In Psalm 42, verse 5, we read, "Why, my soul, are you downcast? Why so disturbed within me? Put your hope in God." Now, hoping in God does not come naturally for sinners like us. We must actually preach it to ourselves and preach it diligently and forcefully, or we'll give in to a downcast and disheartened spirit. The best sermon you can preach to yourself this week may be only 3 words long: hope in God. Now, we tend to use the word hope in different ways. We normally think of hope as the desire for something good in the future. Children might say, "I hope Daddy gets home early tonight so we can play." Or, "I hope that I get that new bike or that new American Girl doll." Youths might say, "I'm really hoping for that new phone." The sports fan might say, "I hope my team wins the pennant." The older student might say, "I hope I pass this test," or even this class. And in our pandemic, we might say, "I hope this is over soon." But the distinctive meaning of hope in Scripture is almost the opposite of our ordinary usage, and it has more to do with God. Biblical hope not only desires something good for the future, it expects it to happen. And it not only expects it to happen, it is confident that it will happen. When God's word says, hope in God, it doesn't mean cross your fingers. It means, to use the words of the famous missionary William Carey, expect great things from God. Back to my poster. "For I know the plans I have for you." You see, we tend to put our trust in the plan, especially the plans that we make. I have this other little sign on a shelf in my office too. Here's a picture of it. It says, "If plan A fails, remember there are 25 more letters." That's what we do. We move from plan A to plan B and so on because we trust in the plans. But Jeremiah 29:11 tells us something different. God knows the plan, and God doesn't have to tell me the plan, because this verse is trying to tell me to trust in God, not the plan. I got the poster for my office to remind me that I'm not supposed to trust in the plan. I'm supposed to trust in God. And what I'm learning is that it's really not about trust per se. It's more about hope. God says he knows the plan, which includes giving his people hope and a future. God's purpose in all his plans is to bring his people into relationship with himself. The passage in Jeremiah 29 continues in verse 12. "Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord." Jeremiah 29:12 through 14. God's plans are not just for you. They are for you in relation to him. This relationship was to begin right away. And in this respect, the "then" at the beginning of verse 12 in Jeremiah 29 is a little misleading. It makes it sound as if God's people will not find him until the end of their exile. What the verse actually says is, "and you will call upon me," not "then." You see, the exiles in Babylon did not have to wait 70 years to have a relationship with God. He invited them into a relationship right away, in Babylon, in their suffering. And he invites us into relationship with him too, right in the middle of our interruptions and right in the middle of our disruptions. That's the hope. He is the hope. If you have God, you have hope because God is hope. Hope is like the foundation of our faith because it reminds us we haven't arrived yet. We're still on our way home. Jesus said, all the pain in the world will someday come to an end. The writer of Hebrews tells us, faith is confidence in what we're hoping for and assurance of what we have not yet seen. While we're waiting, keep hoping. Are you facing difficulties? Keep hoping. Do you get the idea? Don't let fear keep you from going all in on hope. It's the only safe bet there is because God is hope and he's already won. Currently, we're walking through the middle of a pandemic. And earlier this week, I was able to experience my very first pandemic wedding. I did not officiate the wedding, but I was able to be there to celebrate and also to be involved in some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. This was a beautiful celebration of a couple in love coming together before God and a few family and friends to join their lives together in marriage. But I can also tell you that this particular wedding was not the original wedding that they had planned. When they originally got engaged months ago, they began planning the wedding of their dreams. And then came this pandemic. So their plans began to change. And even as they moved forward with some new plans, those new plans had to change again, just a few days before the wedding because of venue issues. But this couple, they believe in God and they believe God. You could see throughout their wedding day their hope, especially as they talked about their future. It was awesome. And in the midst of all the things that went wrong leading up to their special day, in the end, their hope in God is for their marriage. The wedding is just a ceremony, but their future and their hope are found in God. Think about it this way for our story. Even you kids out there, you only get a glimpse of the book when you jump in and start in the middle. It would be crazy to think you could flip to chapter 12 and begin to understand everything. That's just one chapter, and no chapter tells the whole story. The same is true of our lives. We're not in the first chapter, and most of us aren't in the last. We're somewhere in the middle. And hope is what keeps us turning the pages. Now, every good story has unexpected twists, and even the best hero might lose their way for a bit. Don't worry about it. God is writing more chapters. Don't let one bad chapter or a few convince you that you know your whole story. You're in one of those middle chapters, and there's more to come. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11. We can learn from this letter to the exiles, learn about plans. God has the plan for us, plural, and it isn't finished yet. But more importantly, we can also learn about hope, because hope is one of the things that can get interrupted by life if we let it. In the midst of whatever you're going through, you can change your perspective and remind yourself that you can choose hope because God is hope. That's something we can learn from God and His Word about finding hope.